Hello, my name's David Burns of the Assessment Register and welcome to our AS9100 training program. The training program is designed for anyone that's interested in developing their ISO 9001 system into an aerospace level management system, or for those that want to go straight for AS9100. We've developed the course over a number of years and it's based on a proven track record of how we've developed and implemented quality management systems to our clients very successfully, I must point out. Okay, now we've tried to make the training program as practical as possible, but obviously with this type of presentation, you don't have the benefit of stopping me and asking questions. So therefore, what we encourage delegates to do or listeners to do is simply email the assessment register if you have any specific questions against the points we've run throughout this training program. Okay, so into the presentation. The training course program is divided into 4 sessions. We have a basic introduction which gives you an overview of what the course is all about. Session number 2 is about the management system and practical development methods and how we tend to do it anyway. It's a proven way of implementing quality management for AS9100, so it kind of works for us and it works for our clients, and they've been very, very successful. Session number 3, this is all about the standard. It's a bit like walking through treacle, but we try and make it as fun-packed as possible, where we highlight a range of implementation methods to get you over the hurdle of specific areas of the standard. And finally, session number 4, this is all about your consideration for process improvement, and it kind of focuses on the practical areas of improving business performance, both for your organization and how you want to manage things internally, but also of course satisfying the wants and needs of the certification body. But overall, it's a practical course. We've tried to make it as practical as possible. Now, hold that thought for a moment. There's a lot of slides in this presentation, and the idea behind this particular training program and the way we've decided to put it together is simply that you can stop and regroup at any time. Okay, so this is why it's not like a live webinar where you phone in and start talking to us about stuff. This is about us explaining what we've done. You can ask us questions by email at any time, but also you can stop and have a bit of a regroup on specific slides. And we're quite happy for you to use some of these slides internally to present the case to management or staff as and when needed. Okay, the course objectives. Well, we'd like to think you're going to know as much as the certification body auditor at the end of the program. That's our objective, of course. Okay, so first and foremost, we want you to understand all the key technical requirements of the standard itself, to be able to assess your organization for compliance against process effectiveness, whether you comply to legal obligations and contractual obligations. Equally, understand the 9100 requirements in line with the certification body auditor thinking and where they're coming from, and of course be able to demonstrate your commitment to your customers and wider stakeholders that you're actually on the case. Manage the business risks. That's key to AS9100, that you are expected to actually identify your own risks internally, highlight what they are, and then deal with them in an effective way. And then, of course, understand the core aerospace objectives, i.e. internal sampling of product, in-process inspection, supplier assessments, calibration traceability, and other areas such as design, document control, data, risk assessing the business as a whole, and business planning. The whole training program, as I said from the beginning, is to provide you with all the tools and techniques that we believe you require to maintain and develop your quality management system right the way through to certification. Okay, here we go. Session number 1, an introduction to the program. Okay, management systems. So let's explore what's behind these mystical standards. But first, just a little bit about me. I'm the tutor and I'm the one that's going to be talking to you throughout this training program. I'm an aerospace and defence engineer. I've got 30 years hands-on experience within business and government institutions. I've successfully completed over 600 quality management projects worldwide, and today I want you to benefit from those successes. Okay, now let's explore what's behind these mystical standards. Basically, we're going to remove all those secrets. AS 9100 is actually not that complicated. If you're already in aerospace and you may have ISO 9001, for example, the likelihood is you're already complying to a huge bulk of AS 9100 requirements. Okay, so what we're going to do is take you through each part of this introduction. Okay, just to quickly recap, we're going to explain the finer points of the standard, provide an overview of the required structures, discuss any implementation constraints and provide appropriate solutions, and try and build confidence by stimulating debate between delegates so you guys start to have that conversation internally about getting to the issues within your organisation, where you comply, where you don't comply, based on what we've presented within this presentation. Now, what we've tried to do as well is highlight the red parts. So the red text within this presentation are the main areas that you must consider because they will be the main focus for the certification body. So why are we here anyway? Well, as I said earlier, this is exactly those red points. So this is a summary of the red points that you're going to pop up throughout this presentation. So risk management and mitigation, both from a commercial point of view and a technical point of view. The focus is on product safety. Well, it's bound to be product safety because you're dealing with aerospace parts and components and products. So therefore, obviously product safety has to be up there. So you're looking at the risks and how you're removing those risks from production processes right the way through to dispatch of product. Special process requirements, how you control special processes, everything from welding, soldering, dry wire crimping, and the methodologies and the controls of special processes. But again, we'll come on to those in more detail later. Critical items, identification and traceability and sampling of those critical parts. So at contract review, i.e. at the beginning of the contract where you've got the drawings and you've got the bill of materials, it's very important to highlight if there are any critical items within that bill of materials that you can tease out and then put onto your production planning so that you can then start to look at identification and traceability and those added areas of inspection and testing that may be required. Configuration management, well, configuration management in the context of the standard, everything from job planning and how you manage production, what resources you need, but this also includes configuration management with consideration to design, configuration management with consideration to internal auditing, and how you plan a job. Measurement, inspection and calibration methods and requirements. Again, people keep forgetting that implementing a management system, the key support process is of course measurement, inspection and testing, but the inspection and testing must be underpinned by calibration methods and reference standards. On-time delivery performance. This is very, very aerospace. Aerospace and defence sector always talking about on-time delivery, so that will be one of your key performance indicators, one of your KPIs, which again we'll be talking about throughout the programme. Counterfeit parts. This has kind of crept in recently, but it's always been in contractual obligations. But it's something that they've actually decided, look, this is something we need to focus on within the standard now. So mitigating counterfeit parts, stopping counterfeit information, data, parts and components creeping into your management system. For those of you that are new to AS 9100, it's basically ISO 9001 with whistles and bells added to it. Okay, the International Aerospace Quality Group are the scheme owners and they're the ones that have developed the standard. So they basically used ISO 9001 and added the aerospace requirements on top of that. I mean, just to give you an idea, these standards tend to change every 5 to 7 years, okay, but that's in line with the ISO 9001 requirements. What does tend to happen, and just please be aware of this, is that quite often the IAQG and certification bodies will start to add in other requirements of the audit process when they come and visit you, which may not necessarily be in the standard itself. Things like pairs, process effectiveness assessment reporting. Again, we'll talk about that later, but that's something that's crept in on top of the standard itself. You'll note that as I'm talking, I'll often flip between AS9100 and EN9100. I've tried to be a bit European here and use the EN European norm reference for 9100, but the most common term, if you like, for this standard is AS9100. So from time to time you might find that I'll be referring to AS9100, but in fact it's exactly the same as EN9100. Okay, so this particular slide, different types of standard depending on the industry sector, if you like, and the sort of scope of what you do. So here we are, taking it from the top. EN9100, Quality Management System for Aerospace, Space, Defence Organisations, and that's the foundation of the standard. It's the baseline framework for pretty much all the other standards. You got 9110 for Aviation Maintenance Organisations. You got 9115, and that's for software development for aerospace, and then you've got the 9120, which is another common standard, particularly here in the UK, which is the stockist scheme. So for those organisations that are supplying into the aerospace and defence market. Okay. One standard it's worthwhile trying to get your hands on if you can is the 9104, because that's the oversight for the certification bodies. The certification bodies will actually use that standard as an internal accreditation reference, if you like, for their approval from UCAS and other national bodies for accreditation process against 17021. But again, that's a whole new presentation, a whole new can of worms. Okay, 17021 is management systems accreditation of certification bodies, and it's the certification bodies that will come and audit you against ISO 9001 or AS 9100. Okay, so putting things into context, EN 9100 is not for everyone, okay, and even the IAQG accept that smaller end SMEs, it can be a constraint to their business activity. So the IAQG are looking at the higher level, so they're looking at 90%, for example, of supply chain primes to be 9100 certificated. Now, how those primes manage their supply chain, that's down to their contract obligations that they have with those suppliers. So, for example, if your customer asks you to achieve 9100, and it's a contract obligation, so there's not much you can do about it, then you'd be mad not to do it, okay? But others, you can supply product to the aerospace sector. You don't necessarily have to have 9100 certification, okay? That's not what it's all about, okay? So the main certification requirements within the UK when it comes to aerospace will be AS 9100, okay, and then followed closely behind 9110, which is the maintenance side, and then 9120, which is the stockist scheme, as we touched on earlier. The other standards, well, some organisations will go for them, particularly the aerospace software side, which in the UK is quite a big area. But again, it depends on what your contract obligations are with your customers, will depend on what certification standard to go for. And it has to be said, as per the previous slide, if you've got ISO 9001, then quite often that's okay. That's okay for a lot of customers. They're more than happy with that because they've got contract control over you through the purchase order and through the information they're giving you to create the product. Other customers of yours will of course want 9100 and they'll expect you to have that. But again, that's a conversation that you've got to have with your customer. So all I'm trying to say is that don't feel that you have to have 9100. If it's not a contract obligation, then obviously you don't have to. If you're within the supply chain and you can demonstrate compliance to the contract obligations, then 9100 may not be necessary. However, as with all certification, there's a reason why one would continue with certification, and 9 times out of 10 there's a couple of drivers hidden behind. Okay, so obviously it's a high risk product. The product will require additional inspection and scrutiny. The cost of the product is an expensive product, it's an expensive sector to be in. So therefore there are some other drivers that's sort of hidden behind the contract obligations from your customer. Quite often these are insurance driven, regulatory driven, and of course if the primes are involved with research, development and design processes, they may well want you just to have 9100 for their reassurance. Product failure is not an option, as there's no laybys at 39,000 feet. Okay, now we've finished session number 1 and we're into session number 2. Management system, practical development methods. How do we start our quality management system? For some organisations, it is worth starting again. If you're moving from an old traditional ISO 9001 management system and you've had 9001 for some years, sometimes when you decide to implement things like AS 9100, it is worth just starting again. But that's up to you. Depending on how new your management system is, you'll decide on whether it's going to be fit for purpose. Okay, so session number 2.